introduced me to a spirituality in Christianity that I had not experienced. I mean, sometimes we get so scripted with the prayer book that we miss the spirituality and the depth of the tradition, or aren't even introduced to it in some cases. So, I mean, grew up with the prayer book, grew up in the church, grew up with the rituals of the church, but was suddenly introduced to this deep spirituality of Christianity that I didn't know existed.
When life throws a challenge at you, one thing is certain: to find a resolution for every issue, every problem, for everybody, there's more than one way. So welcome everyone. Glad to have you back for another episode of More Than One Way. How you doing, Thom?
I am doing pretty well, all in all.
Good.
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. It's always great when we have a guest with us, and we have a guest today. We have Chris Chase with us. I'm so glad that you were able to take some time to join us today, and we look forward to the conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
And Thom, you've known Chris for quite a while. Can you
we
share a little bit about how you guys came to know each other and your connection?
Yeah, Chris and I go, how about, was that 30 years now or something like that?
Must be 30 years, yeah. Must be.
Golly. Yeah, and so Chris was a priest here in the Diocese of East Tennessee.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know what a diocese is, it's a geographical area, and he used to serve a church up in Norris, and then I was here at St. John's Cathedral, and we just started hanging out. And the truth about Chris is, you know, sometimes the being an ordained ministry is kind of a lonely place, and it can feel isolated. And Chris became a true confidant and really, really good friend, and somebody who I could talk about just about anything with. And he was always had an open heart and mind. And that's a real, real gift. It was a gift to me and continues to be. We still stay in touch. So that's how we met each other.
Cool.
Yeah, Mike, that's really kind. Thank you. You do the same for me. Your open heart and generous spirit
Thank you.
has been important for me over the years.
So that's why I wanted to talk to him.
Yeah. Do you, you mentioned that kind of some loneliness involved potentially in being in that ministry setting. Could you talk a little bit more about that, what you meant by that?
Well, I mean, we're kind of, for me, from my perspective, we're kind of on call all the time. Mm-hmm. And feel like I have a fairly public job that can have some expectations that I'm wasn't always aware of as a young person. And I couldn't always live up to those expectations. And so at times I just felt alienated from the job and from being in a church. Not sure I could do the job, not sure I could fulfill the call. And so to be able to talk about stuff like that, in addition to some of the things we've talked about throughout this podcast, just the kind of the ongoing mystery of anything having to do with religion.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. And oftentimes people who don't do an ordained or don't have an ordained role have a very difficult time understanding what it's like. Sure. So sometimes it's even hard to describe what it's like.
Yeah.
So to have somebody who is ordained as well, some things were just left unsaid, and we could just. Is that fair, Chris? You think?
Yeah, I think that's fair. There may be some of our colleagues who are a little more certain, but I think they would probably be able to say it's such a different role than many roles in society that comes with a loneliness, and I think that's witnessed throughout scriptures as well. I mean, those people. It's not like Elijah's got a lot of friends.
Yeah. I don't think he had any friends, Chris.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm not equating you or I with Elijah. I'm just saying that.
Well, Chris, I think, just to open up to our audience a little bit, I'd love to hear a little bit about your early kind of connection with religion and your faith growing up and how that kind of led you into the role that you're in now.
Yeah, thank you. It's one of those lifelong journeys.
Mm-hmm.
We were we attended an Episcopal church in Andover, Massachusetts, when I was growing up, and while while a young child, you know, what parents make young children do in the church, acolyte or join the choir. Also had an uncle who was in the ordination process and uh, was ordained an Episcopal priest and was a Navy chaplain during the Vietnam War. And so I didn't see a lot of him because he was on the West Coast and sailing to Vietnam with the Navy, but would send me little Navy prayer books. I still have it. Which is all to say, the church was a part of our lives and our world. And we actually moved from Massachusetts to Oak Ridge, which is how we get connected to Tennessee, and then from Oak Ridge over to England, and lived in England. And when we moved, at the same time as we moved to England, my mother was diagnosed with a significant cancer, and so left a place that I felt very comfortable, moved to a strange country, strange culture, and sort of my mother, who was the pillar of the family, had to deal with this significant cancer, and so the energy revolved around her cancer. This transition as a 13-year-old was pretty unsettling, and you know, the beauty of being in England is the Episcopal Church is the Church of England in the United States, and it was the one familiar place as my world was sort of falling apart that I could go and sit in. But I also, Whitney, I also had that childlike trust, and this would be interesting to unpack somewhere. Maybe I have some analysis, but that childlike trust that you could actually cut deals with God. So I remember saying, you know, now again, the Episcopal Church was part of life. The Church of England was familiar. There was a great rector there who actually became a dear friend of mine and a great mentor, an uncle who was already a mentor. But this deal I cut with God is, if God would let my mother live, I would become a priest in the church. And it's sort of kind of go back to that, even however many years later, 50 years later, maybe not as long as that. You know, boy, did God hold me to that kind of that sort of childlike, I can cut deals with God, or you can negotiate with the divine, or if I meet all the metrics, somehow things will work out in life just the way I want them to. And
how's that going?
You know, that was my idea. It's not I discovered that really the universe doesn't revolve around me as it did when I was 13, 14.
Oh, man. I hated that day when I discovered that.
Yeah, it just really sucked. And people used to say, well, is your mother alive? And I say, no. Oh, okay. So that's how that works.
Yeah.
So, I can, I can jest about it a little bit now. But anyway, so that's the religiosity was always a part of life. Whitney, I went off to university and didn't mean to read philosophy or theology, but ended up doing so. And that's really where the faith journey begins, because you have to move out of that, the challenge of people's thinking and thoughts about God and God's place in the universe, through those deep thinkers. And human history is full of those thinkers. Unfortunately, mostly male thinkers. It's nice to have a feminine voice these days to help us understand more fully the personhood of God. But found that myself that childlike faith and belief was challenged. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it ended, and you have to put it in the tomb. That's our faith. You have to put it in the tomb, and you have to let it compost, and you have to see what new emerges and what is resurrected. And what resurrected for me was a more deep, I believe, um, journey. I don't want to say faith, a more deep journey.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was called to a journey to find that fullness of God and what that looked like. And to quote St. Paul, I mean, if we see dimly now, what does it look like to see God face to face? And I hope that journey has carried me um, through those clouds and that dimness. And I hope I see God more fully than I did when I was a 14-year-old child or a 22, 21-year-old undergraduate or a 28-year-old graduate student. Um, and now coming toward the end of my church career, um, yeah, I'm hoping that I'm just going to say it again, that I hope I see God more fully. I would never claim to see that I have yet to see God face to face,
Mm-hmm.
or if I have, it's been very brief. Um, but yeah, a deeper journey, more faithful journey.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks, man. Hey, so where did that journey take you? In addition to, I'm just assuming, obviously seminary, but where else
It
did it
didn't
take you?
take me. Yeah, it actually didn't take me to seminary. It took me to continue. I was working after I graduated through a series of events and an eventual move back to the United States, and actually the subsequent death of my mother as well. Moved back to the United States and was working in industry and really didn't like it. It was not, the discernment was that I wasn't cut out for this. Yeah, I just wasn't cut out for a life in business. And as I reflected back, I thought, well, what did I really enjoy? And I really enjoyed the theology, and reading theology. So I didn't go to seminary, Tom. I went to a seminary, but it was for an academic track.
Oh, okay.
Um, at, so it
I
was a
forgot that.
Methodist seminary because they gave me a full scholarship. Um, I went for the money, quite frankly, and got a great education. But it took, so the academic quest took me to reading a lot of East Asian philosophy, a lot of Buddhist sutras, a lot of Buddhist scriptures, um, and then a lot of Islamic texts and scriptures. So I started looking in the world traditions for that, some of those answers that had been haunting me um, since my young teenage years. If Christianity wasn't affording those answers, could I find them in other places? And it was really, the divine works, God works, and we say God, well, I will say God's a mystery. So it's not surprising that so often how it works in life is mysterious, or there's a mystery to it. But it was an accidental. They were trying to fill a class, and so they asked if I would go register for this class with this visiting professor from Hawaii, who introduced us to those dialogues between Thomas Merton and Suzuki,
Oh, yeah.
and that those dialogues between Christian, um, I, I don't know if Merton would call himself a mystic, but those people who are in deep prayer and saw their journey as a journey, and those in the Buddhist tradition, which awakened. I mean, it introduced me to a spirituality in Christianity that I had not experienced. I mean, sometimes we get so scripted with the prayer book that we miss the spirituality and the depth of the tradition, or aren't even introduced to it in some cases. So I mean, grew up with the prayer book, grew up in the church, grew up with the rituals of the church, but was suddenly introduced to this deep spirituality of Christianity that I didn't know existed.
Was
And
was that through Merton or through this?
it was through Merton, yeah,
Yeah,
through
yeah.
reading
Okay.
Merton,
Yeah.
and then the Buddhist texts, and really coming to an understanding of that mystery or the emptiness of God and the place of God, how that permeates creation. And as a novice, there was new ideas and reawakened this. Well, wait a second, Merton can find this, and he's Catholic. Can I find it in the Episcopal Church, in the Episcopal tradition? And was challenged by somebody. Again, it was a Methodist seminary. Challenged by somebody to go to this Episcopal church one Sunday. I'd stopped going to church at that point, and had this deeply profound experience around the Eucharist that was transformative. And I would say it was a conversion or a reconversion or a awakening or a reawakening to the depths of God's presence in our lives. And I think the mystery is, I think it was that class that I was pretty much directed to sign up for because they just needed bodies to justify the expense of having this scholar there, opened up this spirituality or an awareness or an introduction to the spirituality that then allowed me to do the translation and see the Episcopal Church holding that same depth of spirituality in ways that I never discovered as a child in Sunday school or as a young adult. Yeah.
What was the Eucharistic experience, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, it's so I was in Boston, and this classmate of mine came up and said, "Well, you're an Episcopalian, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, as Episcopalians do. Yeah, sure. You're not going to ask me anything too religious, are you? Because that's not what we do." I said, "Yeah, I grew up in the Episcopal Church." And he said, "Oh, I think you should go to you're a student of religion and world religions, and you like learning and going to see new liturgies and experiencing new forms of worship. Are you familiar with this church downtown Boston?" And he started to describe it, and it was, they ring bells and they say the Angelus, and there's statues of Mary, and there's lots of incense. And I said, "Oh, you silly Methodist," or words to that effect. That's not an Episcopal church. That's a ancient Catholic church. Most Catholic churches don't, do that. I said, "Do that." And he said, "No, it's the Book of Common Prayer, right? That's what we were using." But there were statues of Stephen and again this big crucifix and a rude screen. And he didn't know all the words. I said, "You're nuts. You're crazy. That's a Catholic church. You're mistaken." He said, "Well, look, I think you'd enjoy it. So just go look at it sometime." So it was one snowy. It really was snowing, and it was a question of whether Dunkin' Donuts and get my donuts and coffee or go to this church. And I thought, well, I'll go down out of interest and I'll get the donuts later and go down and check out this church. And it was the Church of the Advent in Boston, which is a Anglo-Catholic church. And one of the sort of in Anglo-Catholic world, it's an important church for the movement in this country. Meaning it was very high church. It was a movement that came out of Oxford that reclaimed that Roman Catholic part of the Episcopal Church.
Right. So Roman Catholic in terms of like focus on the sacrament.
Focus on the sacrament.
Eucharist it becomes the primary ritual.
Yes.
There's a lot of bells and incense, right? That's high church, right? Okay.
Yes, and the priest. In the theology would be it's very much the sacrificial offering of Jesus. So the Eucharist is this sacrificial. So I went, and I won't say it happened the first Sunday, but it was attractive enough that I went back for another Sunday out of interest. Just to confirm that I was seeing what I was seeing or experiencing what I was experiencing. And the Church of the Advent is one of those wonderful Episcopal churches that has some deep pockets and resources, and had just this phenomenal, and still has this phenomenal choir. and are not afraid to sing Latin Eucharistic pieces. And the, the liturgy began, blessed, that we're all familiar with at St. John's, blessed be God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and blessed be God's kingdom. And then maybe they said the Angelus before the service, but they were singing this music, liturgical music that day, that my soul, Thom had just, and Whitney had just, it captured my soul. It was like
Yeah,
it grabbed a hold of me, and it was dragging me deeper and deeper into this place of I don't know where. And I just found myself closing my eyes, and it was almost as though the world, and I hope this doesn't sound strange to your listeners, but it was like the world was collapsing into this place. So it was dragging me into something deeper than me, the music. So kudos to your wonderful choir at St. John's as well, and the ministry they provide to your community. So the Eucharistic prayer was happening. The Sanctus may have been in Latin, and it was not unusual for that part of the service to go on for 10, 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And so this music continues to pull me in. The Eucharist happens, and the priest turns around because he's facing the wall still. It's one of those churches, and he turns around and goes, "Behold the Lamb of God, behold the one who takes away the sins of the world." And it was just like, boom. And I'd like to clap my hands, but I won't do it in case it's not good on podcast, but boom. And it was like I just got it. I just got it, that the incarnation was real, that Christmas was not this goofy, and forgive me, I don't mean to be judgmental or for that sound judgmental.
No, goofy's a good word. That's a good word.
Yeah.
We studied that in my theology class. Goofy. So go ahead.
Goofy.
Yeah.
It's a great theological term. It's not the sentimental commercial. It was a collapse of the mundane and the divine. It was a recognition that God is incarnate in all things all the time.
Yeah.
And this Eucharist is not some hocus pocus, and it's not magic, and it's more than the theological debates we've had about it for 500, 1,000, 1,500 years. It was this real possibility that God was saying in your life to everybody gathered in that Church of the Advent that Sunday, in your life, I am fully present, and you are fully present in my life.
Wow.
And that's all symbolized in that bread and that cup.
Yeah. What a powerful experience. It makes me think of the Paul in Acts with in God we live and move and have our being, and God's being is within us. That kind of reciprocal experience.
Yes.
Yeah. And that once again, we kind of talked about this some in our last podcast, and I just want to see if this is your experience as well. That kind of cuts across all religious traditions at that experiential level. They might not use the term God. Like my guess is Buddhists wouldn't use the term God, but they might have the same experience. Is that fair?
Yes, and I'm gonna have a qualifier. Yes. I mean, and that was what came out of that work Merton did, because he just didn't stop with Buddhist. He would meditate with any number of traditions, and there have been other, usually, historically, it's been Roman Catholic monastics, people who belong to orders who have the freedom to go and sit with those of other traditions.
Yeah.
So yes, I believe that we across traditions can sit and experience parts of the divine. My qualifier, Thom, is that I don't know if I can say that my experience is the same as my Muslim sister or
fair enough.
a Buddhist, because any more than I could say it's the same as yours or Whitney's or Shay's or Christibeth's, because we all carry our own histories and our own piece of God and our own biases that whereas I might experience that presence of Jesus, I can't say that it's the exact same experience, but
Yeah.
yet I know that all five of us in this room together are experiencing the divine in ways that we can, and
Yeah.
because we are who we are. I
Yeah.
can't. I just don't want to. I don't want to say Whitney's experience is the same as mine or Shay's experience is the same as mine, because they're individuals, and even though I would also argue that we're all creatures of God and have access to the same God, and we
Yeah.
all live in the same God.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate the qualifier because I certainly didn't mean everybody's having the exact experience. I just mean more it's the phenomenon that we're trying to describe. And
Yes. Yes.
we'll all
Yes.
try to get at it, and then religious traditions try to get at it, and they use the language that's appropriate for that particular tradition.
Right.
Just as I might
Right.
use the language that's appropriate for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So yeah, you're talking about the people who influence you, or the kind of the, don't want to use the term mystic, but I don't know what else to use. So we'll just go with
That's fine.
People who really were on a quest and realized that the thing they were searching for was searching for them. Mm. Those people became kind of like your primary teachers, it sounds like. What do you think about like just kind of like the common everyday person? Do you think that they're on any kind of spiritual quest, or they're searching for anything these days, or that anything we're talking about speaks to them?
Oh, I don't know if anything I've ever spoken about speaks to anybody else. That's after 30 years of giving sermons.
That's the danger, man. I swear. It feels like that. Oh my God. You took the words right out of my mouth.
And maybe I shouldn't have been speaking for 30 years. I don't know. Yeah, I hope that it's not just ordained or religious who are on this quest. My experience is in ministry that there's a great guy in East Tennessee. I don't have to name him, but he used to always reference the clergy as, well, you professional Christians.
Yeah.
He was sometimes a member of the church up there in Norris. And I hope that it's just not professional Christians. And I don't believe that. I believe that people come to religious communities, belong to religious communities, because there is a quest, there is a desire to find something that's present in their lives, and knowing that sometimes, knowing that life can be incredibly hard for people. Mm-hmm. And I think that oftentimes, like a 14-year-old Chris Chase, in those moments of incredible brokenness in routine or patterns or life, when that which seemed solid was no longer, that those can be real moments of growth for people, as hard as they are. And I don't want people to experience that, but that's life. But in those hard places, it's where we're broken open, that the divine can come in, as in those joyful places of incredible joy, when we feel elation and beyond mm-hmm. ourselves, whether that's in love or relationship or in community. And so I hope whatever we professional Christians manage or manipulate or put together for a Sunday, Saturday, whatever our services are, the people who are in those places and need to tap or touch something divine and beyond themselves, they can find it there for that moment in their life, in that moment. Appreciating life is overwhelming when you step out of those sanctuaries.
Yeah, yeah. So out in San Francisco, where do you see that search taking place the most?
I just had this conversation at clergy conference with. It's not a good question today. It's have me back in 3 months when I thought this through. somebody made an observation about Californian religiosity yesterday that I'm still trying to get my head around. It's, I mean, I think you will all appreciate that San Francisco, I don't know if it's the most secular, quote unquote secular. I'm not sure what that term means in our culture anymore. That's because secularity may be the religion, but it has low attendance. It has very low attendance. I think 7% of the population attends a religious
Oh yeah.
service or community. Um, that doesn't mean I got to be really careful here. They
No,
still
you
live
really
here.
don't. You don't have to be careful. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
no. If I were there, I
And
wouldn't have to be careful. I could say all I wanted.
we'll cut it if you don't like it. We'll cut it if you don't like it.
There's a hubris to Silicon Valley that almost almost smacks of religiosity. And I we're not the only culture. I can remember. I mean, back in grad school, um, somebody saying that the only religion that's left in Japan is technology, and that may be I need to be very careful because there's this resurgence of interest in Christianity happening right now in Silicon Valley, led by some of the gods of Silicon Valley. There's a resurgent. People are writing articles about how Christianity's become, it's just trendy in Silicon Valley right now. It's what's that, if that's long standing. I hope so, to some extent, some real extent. So I don't know. I mean, humanity doesn't tolerate a void very well, and when we look into as we look into our futures or the meaning of the universe, the meaning of our lives, or what's the sum total of my life, we don't like emptiness, and so we'll fill a void. And I just sometimes wonder if the religiosity of this particular area can be stuffed with computer codes and the hubris around what machine learning and artificial intelligence is going to do for humanity. I sometimes wonder if we make that too godlike. But I think most people, Thom, Whitney, Shay, Christibeth, I've learned over the years, if you meet people from different places and cultures and traditions and backgrounds and you travel, you learn that most people really just want to get up in the morning and know that their house is safe and their family's safe and that you're going to have breakfast. And if you have children, they're going to go to school and be safe. And that there's something beyond ourselves that makes life purposeful and meaningful. We've all had enough conversations, even with atheists, that I think even in denying that, there's a desire for knowing that my life means something and there's purpose. And I don't think that's any different in San Francisco. I just think we may be a little more inclined to fill the void with technological answers and think that technology can provide, or good wine. I mean, good Napa. I'll take the good wine as well as a valid. There's a reason why the Romans and the Greeks liked gods of wine. Because Napa produces some, and Sonoma produces some good wine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sorry.
I don't know if that's what you're getting at, but yeah.
Well, I mean, part of the reason I'm asking this is because I think that there's a religious / spiritual desire within everybody. I think it. Carl Jung tried to get into it. He called it the religious function of the psyche, and the idea that within us there's this need to get at some of the things you're talking about and connect to this thing that's greater than us. And we'll find all kinds of ways to try to do that. One big way I think that is here, and my guess is it's in California too, is nature.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah.
So nature's going to be a big way, and whatever way. And I know Whitney does some stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think part of what he does is religious quest. So
Yeah, definitely with, I like to do running and different adventure type events in beautiful and unusual places. And I tend to do a lot of those with people that I don't know. So we kind of just show up or in a group together and then have an experience together, either a hike or a run or some sort of exploration, and have found just some really deep connection in that to those people, but to the place, and also to, there's been an attraction for me to uncover more of who I am in those kinds of experiences. And so that's something that I've been really drawn to and have looked for. Those opportunities for me, I've found that it's the formula that I kind of think about is somewhere I've never been with people I've never met to do something I've never done. And being somebody that grew up very fearful and very closed off, that's been kind of an intentional path for me to grow outside of that. And as I've stepped into that, I've found it keeps expanding. And I keep finding new things about the world, about people, but about myself too. And so that's just been part of my, I think it's part of my faith journey in a way. I mean, it's just part of knowing more clearly who I am and being more open to the possibility of what that means to connection to others.
yeah, so for me, that's going to start to get at like somebody's individual spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you talked about, each of us having our own independent experience, and I think that's Whitney's particular experience each time he does something like that, right? And to me, nature represents the God in whom we live and move and have our being. And so when he goes out and does that, that for me would be as religious as your experience in the Church of the Advent. For me, or it would at least be, if you want to use the term, spiritual, meaning a deep inner experience that has an impact on you, and like you said, helps you discover more about yourself and then therefore about the world. And it sounds like too, and I'm going to ask both of you this, that the spiritual / religious experience or quest kind of frames the way you see other people, or at least it helps you.
Sure.
Yeah.
How
absolutely.
so? Tell me how so.
Sure.
I think one thing for me that that is continually inspiring for me is to see people who I wouldn't expect to be able to take on a challenge, not only take it on, but excel. And blow past my personal ability or my own expectation of what I think they could do.
Oh yeah.
And so that's become something that I look for and I'm really drawn to, and I'm excited about people trying things for the first time or people pushing past what they feel like a limit is. And these experiences have let me experience that kind of firsthand again and again, but it shapes and changes how I interact with people around me with that idea of that belief and that potential for everyone to be bigger than what they feel like maybe they've come to believe about themselves.
Yeah, I hear you. So bigger than what they see, and in a sense, bigger than what you initially saw.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How else are you going to find that, right? Yeah, I think you have to put yourself in the position to find stuff like that.
I told this guy got in my head yesterday, so that's where I went with your question. We were just talking about he was just making an association how Silicon Valley may be raising up a religiosity that's as weird as Jim Jones or Charles Manson that California is famous for.
Interesting.
In these San Francisco, the Bay Area, in these abject commercial capitalist societies, you can get so capitalist, so money focused that the religiosity gets skewed, and it produces Jim Jones and just strange variations of religiosity. So that's where my head was. But the nature, I would almost agree. I won't agree 100% that the religiosity, the spirituality of California as a whole is lies in nature. And people, I mean, I think the environmental movement that comes out of the state is because of that experience of the spiritual that exists within nature. Um, you know, last week that gospel talked about the chasm that
Yeah.
existed between Lazarus and the rich man.
Yeah.
And Abraham says to the rich man, that chasm is fixed. It's fixed. Like you can't get from here to, Lazarus couldn't get from here to there, even if Lazarus wanted to. And I got thinking about, well, where are those fixed chasms in the life? But more importantly, where are those places where there's no chasm, where people actually do get to interact? Church at its best, I think church at its best would be a place where there are no chasms, where we prove Abraham wrong. But but it may be the cathedrals of nature are those places where we get to see each other, rich, poor, black, white, brown, whatever languages we speak, whatever religiosity we follow. And I'm just, as I was listening to Whitney, I was thinking particularly of those of you who have been graced with being able to visit Muir Woods here in Marin County. And it's a redwood forest with some old growth redwoods that, and if you've spent any time in the redwoods or with redwoods, it's like the Smokies. When you get into the Smokies, you breathe the beginning of creation. You just feel it. Different with the redwoods. I shouldn't say it's like the Smokies, but those experiences. But anyway, in Muir Woods, if you've been graced with being there, there's a section they call the cathedral.
Oh, wow.
And they invite everybody who walks into this grove of redwoods, this particular grove of redwoods, to just be silent. So they ask you to turn your phones off, don't talk to your neighbors. And when you walk quietly into this cathedral, St. John's Cathedral, you in that silence, not only do you see the majesty and the age of these trees, which are thousands of years old, and all the life and history they've watched and witnessed, but you begin to notice that your neighbor is visiting from France, and there's a family from Mexico, and there's an African American family, and there's a group of people over here, and everybody's just quiet together, and all that chasm collapses.
Yeah.
In that silence amongst those trees, you begin to see people you were just walking by, right? You're just looking at the trees and you're talking to whomever you're with, and you're not even paying attention to the people around you. But in that silence, you see the children that you've walked over, and that cathedral really acts as a cathedral, and so to your point, I think you actually see people, and you see people. I'll leave it at that. You see people.
Yeah. When you're in that state, that kind of connected place, and the woods sounds like that place. Certainly a church could be that place. I think so they become like holy sites. For me, spirituality is helping me to try to become that kind of a holy site myself, that I become that.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's a beautiful statement.
Yeah, I'm pretty far away, but that's the hope. That's my hope, is that doing these spiritual practices, staying on my own spiritual/religious quest, is to open myself up more to myself and to other people in such a way that, I become that space where someone can just come and be.
Yeah, I love that idea where you're talking about people being quiet together.
Yeah.
And I just think that's there's such a need for that right now, just when debate and argument and opinion and other things just so quickly come up from inside of us.
Yeah.
I wonder just if we had more of those quiet together moments, how that might help us to see people, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, because once again, this is how I think spirituality can serve us today. I stay away sometimes from the word religion, because a lot of times religion, we fall into the let's debate. And I'm not saying that's terrible, but I think it has its limit. And we do that so much now that finding places where, no, we're not going to ask you to debate. We're not going to try to decide who's right or who's wrong. We just ask you to come here and be here. And then go from that place. And sometimes when we talk, we ruin it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, well,
everything's great until the preacher gets up there and says something. It's like, just be quiet.
We've just thrown our careers under the bus.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I mean, I'm part of it too, right? I'm part of the gabbing clergy. But for what we're talking about, you see, obviously that has its place. But from what Whitney was talking about, for me, it's like we have a lot of places where people debate. We don't have many places where people come and just sit. Yeah. So
I think that's the, I don't know who came up with that idea of let's call this grove of the redwoods the cathedral. But I mean, whatever park ranger or design, I mean, but obviously there was something within them that recognized that silence can bring people together.
Yeah.
And it may have been intended just so you stop talking and stop looking at your phone and you look at the trees, but it does something much more powerful than that.
Wow. Well, Chris, man, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you. Is there anything else you want to say for the good of the cause? Anything else to toss out there about how the spiritual world, spiritual quest, the religious stuff can help us as a people or anything like that? Or do you want to just call it a day?
No, let me cycle. I'm clergy. We talk for a living.
Yeah, I know, right?
Don't leave the door. Don't leave the door open. I think to go back to your point, Thom, I think the journey, the quest that we began this conversation with, in seeing God more clearly and seeing God, striving to see God face to face, is coming to that place where you begin to see yourself as that sanctuary, that you as bad as we all feel about ourselves, or as narcissistic as we could be about ourselves, it doesn't matter where we are in the spectrum. If the quest is to begin to see that God can love me and God can be present in me, so much so that God invites me to be a part of God. I mean, God, I can be a part of the Godhead in a very qualified way. I don't want to say we're gods, but that there's that invitation, and for those Episcopalians who grew up, who still use that Rite One Eucharistic language, it's all there. I mean, that's the theology of that. We can abide in God and God abides in us.
Yeah.
And I think those sanctuaries, if we can start with ourselves, that however we get fed, whether we find that in the Redwoods or in the Smokies or in Crutch Park or wherever we go, that those sanctuaries for us to be able to walk into that, begin to see more clearly, we begin to be able to see Whitney is holding God, and Shay is holding God, and Christibeth is holding God, and Thom holding God in ways that bless me and my own journey and my own experience of God. So I think that whether that's in silence or in conversations like this, so I just wanted to say thank you for lifting up that image of yourself being a sanctuary as well.
Yeah, man. Thanks for filling it in. I appreciate it. And Whitney, do you have anything else?
I think that's it. Chris, we thank you so much for being with us and taking the time to jump into conversation with us as we explore religion and spirituality and what it means to be on that journey together.
All right. Hey, it's been fun. It's good to see you all.
Yeah, you too.
You too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the More Than One Way podcast, brought to you by the Center for Spiritual Practice in Knoxville, Tennessee. We really appreciate your time and would love to hear your feedback. You can reach us by emailing hello@morethanonewaypod.com, or you can connect with us on social media using the handle @morethanonewaypod. If you found this episode helpful, we hope that you'll share it with your friends, with your family, with people you work with all the people who you know. Thank you and take care.